Cheers, man.
We are back after a nice summer break. They say buy in May and go away, but they don't tell you when you should come back. And I say no better time to come back than October. So welcome to October. It's good to be back.
Grab a drink. It's time for another episode of Off the Record, on the Rocks. Join Michael Toner and Ankarina Lara as we discuss the latest in all things Web3, AI, metaverse, and crypto. Tune out the noise and turn up the signal as we pour ourselves into the future. Better make mine a double.
It's great to be back, Michael. And if there was ever a time to get everything up, it's now. You and I have been talking about this year, what's going to happen after the summer, the different catalysts and events that are going to drive forward everything from innovation in Web3 and AI to development and regulation for crypto to presidential election to planning in Los Angeles for the Olympics. They're already talking about it and setting things up. I mean, it's like everyone is looking forward and then looking forward. So October to me feels like we're up, high up, and we're looking down at what we're going to see coming. And yeah, I mean, not financial advice, but after we chatted last night, I bought a couple bags. ETH and a little Bitcoin.
It is also a solar eclipse day. I believe the second one in 2024. I could be wrong, but always like to look to the moon and the stars to tell us what is going on. Aside from all of that, here in Washington, D.C., we are knee deep in the political climate. We had the VP debate last night. All of that happening at the same time, there is unrest in the Middle East, the potential breakout here, we can call it war, happening in the Middle East, just as most Americans are really myopically focused in on our two-party race happening. Feels like maybe a little bit distracted is a good time for the rest of the global economy to kind of shake out who's going to be doing business with whom, and simultaneously the big billions, the big guys, the Microsofts, the Googles, the Apples, and none other than Sam Altman, our darling boy of 2024 from OpenAI, closing what's got to be the largest funding round ever, maybe $6.6 billion valuation, with some heavy hitter names, some we don't recognize. We have a lot to get to. So from global to local, you tell me where you want to start. Let's unpack all of it.
Yeah, well, maybe since we know that next week in October is going to be interesting real life stuff happening, let's focus on that maybe at the end. I think looking at that global view is something that's really, really important, because while there has been a war going on, I mean, and some people could say hundreds, if not thousands of years, depending on what side of the line of the borders you're on. But certainly, as in the last 50 years, since there have been these states created and there's two states coexisting and everything else, suddenly, and I want to say this was yesterday or today, but Iran just decided to fire 200 rockets into Israel. And it was not, insert proxy name of guerrilla fighters here, fire missiles into Israel. It's just straight up the country, the sovereign state of Iran is doing that. That to me sounds pretty aggressive and pretty crazy, but I guess one person was killed and no one else was hurt because there's some insane protection dome of drones and anti-missile systems. So now hitting the button and saying, hey, here comes 200 giant rockets, and yet it's hard to know how much of a signal of war is something like that. But I say that because there then is, on the other side of things, behind the scenes, you mentioned Sam Altman raising all that money, $6.6 billion. And he didn't just go to his pals at Microsoft, which he did. He didn't just go to NVIDIA. He just didn't go to SoftBank. He went to an Abu Dhabi-based investor, which we remember Sam was saying, I'm going to go to Saudi Arabia and I'm going to raise $7 trillion or something like was insane. And the United States government said, hey, what are you talking about? Wait a minute. What are you doing? So maybe he got the order of magnitude lower. Instead of 7.6 trillion, he got 7.6 billion. I guess it'd be 3 orders of magnitude.
but
So similar. It's like the hyperbole of what that sounds like. Also, I feel like is mirrored in the hyperbole that's being talked about in this global conflict. It's hard to know what it means when Iran shoots 200 rockets into Israel. It's hard to know when the Middle East funds a large number of billions to American AI development. Like, tell me
yeah.
sort of the juxtaposition to me.
Well,
Are,
war is expensive, which is what comes to my mind. And the only other time that we talk about billions of dollars being invested aside from in technology would be in times of war. And when I think about the Iron Dome, as you just described it, and I saw the news headlines from last night, and I watched the video myself, and you see this barrage of rockets, and you see, to your point, little demolition on the ground and seemingly little loss of life. That protection comes at a dollar figure, right? To be able to run a mesh of geo-targeted, precision-guided missiles with enough range and enough capacity to destroy 200 simultaneous rockets coming down over top of you requires technology and ammunition and money and surveillance. And, to me, it signals that the U.S. is involved. Take it or leave it. I would say that the only other country that likely has that kind of money and power and weaponry to be able to deploy that kind of protection would be America. And it does force America then to sort of show our cards, or, even if it's not America, even if it is, Israel's ability to protect themselves, then it's still showing the capabilities of modern warfare. We've heard about this Iron Dome. It's been talked about in modern warfare, but to see it deployed in October of 2024, it shows you that that is no longer a viable form of warfare. That also is kind of crazy to think that the headline I'm reading right now from NBC says Iran has said it concluded its attack on Israel. Well, of course you're going to say you concluded the attack because you're done. It didn't work. You couldn't penetrate it. That to me is a showing of your cards. You take all that back around to the technology, Microsoft making a big announcement just a couple of weeks ago about $1 billion invested into AI. I think there was a big focus there on Latin America innovation, technology in Latin America. Kind of interesting. That seems very geolocated here to America, doesn't it? And while they're no longer the biggest investor in OpenAI, they're still hedging a little bet over there. So I do think that it's easy to say it right now, but there are, of course, connections between money and war and technology and who wins, and all of these tools being pointed at cybersecurity. You mentioned things happening next week, but I'm planning to attend this NVIDIA Washington, D.C. summit happening October 7th through the 9th here in D.C. And of course, all of the defense contractors are trying to understand, how do we have the latest technology? Could we defend every city in America with an Iron Dome of that protection layer today, right now? And I don't know the answer to that. I sure as hope so, but don't we need the tools and the technologies to do it?
Yeah, and I know a few folks who actually are employees of Raytheon Technology, and they work on, of course, different projects that they can't talk much about, in polite company. But I do know something that they've told me is that, of course, initially, so many of the weapon systems that we've heard named before, right? There used to be like these Patriot missiles that were parked just outside of Kuwait, right? The Patriot missile system. That was 20, 25 years ago, right? When there was the incursion into Iraq. This new one, the Iron Dome. I mean, at one point there was Star Wars. Remember, Star Wars was the Reagan era, that satellites with these lasers were going to just shoot down the ICBMs, the intercontinental ballistic missile. And that was like from the 80s war games, movie era. And of course that never manifested really. But it was interesting because it turns out that the missiles that they're going to shoot are not going to go up through space. So you can't be up there. You got to be down below. So the Iron Dome is sort of the latest thing. And from what I understand, talking to those folks from Raytheon was that, well, I guess Raytheon has had a hand in developing like everything that's ever been used in war ever, alongside guys like Halliburton and a few others. But then the idea is that you hand off the technology to the country that you are like collaborating with, and then that country takes it from there and goes. So I think the part of the reason why the United States, well, we're not like raising our hand and screaming, it was us, it's American made Iron Dome, you're welcome, or whatever. Like we kind of have a more subtle position, but like you said, follow that money. How much money has been invested in Israel? And I want to say that they're called the Israeli Aerospace something division. However, they're the ones who protect themselves now. But then we have these other questions that have come up. And this is one from a show we had, I want to say it could even be a year ago. No, it wasn't a year ago. It was 6 months ago, where it was revealed that Israeli infrastructure and military was using an AI tool that they were developing. I don't know who's responsible for helping them develop this AI tool, but it was called Lavender, which just rings the bell. Yeah. And Lavender is the name of the AI that has been allowing the Israeli Mossad division to better target where their opponents and enemy combatants are, and then run the calculation. This is where it gets a little gritty, but running those calculations where they said, before Lavender, we would have to look and decide and pick 2 targets. And, based on all this intel and this research, what could we hit that would be effective and that we wouldn't have as many civilian casualties? Well, now Lavender comes in, which of course just sounds like something very nice and very peaceful. Nice lavender. It's a nice color, but it's deciding in real time, okay, there's 2,000 locations that I'm looking at in this one little area of a neighborhood. And I am going to tell you real quick, these are the 5 best targets in the next hour with a minimal amount of collateral damage, et cetera. Now, but the question would be asked by any normal person like you or I. Well, what does Lavender say when you say, I would like no collateral damage? I'm like, oh, well, we're just looking for minimal collateral damage. So now, whoever is helping develop Lavender, is there a chance that any of the AIs that we are talking about at all times, any of the team who works for Google Gemini, the team who works for Microsoft Copilot, the team who works for Sam Altman, ChatGPT, OpenAI, do any of those individuals have any ties into the government agencies that are actively developing AI? It would stand to reason they do, because there's not that many people on the planet who actually know how to develop AI.
Did you
it
see
feels like
this
a
Microsoft
real private little club? No, I have not.
The guy that Microsoft had to hire back, wasn't it Microsoft?
Yeah.
And they dropped a couple billions to hire him, right? Announces, I have to look for this one, but I saw this the other day that there was a couple $1 billion in salary offered to a developer. You have to Google it, but that makes sense to me that like if there's somebody who actually knows, how to build this stuff and has that kind of a secret, no better way to put it, I guess, then it is fascinating to see how much money companies are able, willing, and ready to throw at artificial intelligence. And we led that from the global outbreak of war, regional war, if you will, that's happening. And I think that a lot of that shuffle, because America is leading up to our election in November, about a month away, I think that global uncertainty, it lends itself to this shuffling of money, this shuffling of priorities, this shuffling of technology, of partners, of who we're going to do business with, of how we're going to do business, and a little bit of hedging bets in case of either party winning the election. The corporations, especially those that are participating in war and the industrial complex around war and the technological industrial complex around war. Think about that. We talk about the industrial complex almost always in terms of like these companies building physical tanks and trucks and guns and weaponry and missiles and technology, but it's also a tool like Lavender. It's the AI, it's the surveillance, it's the data that these companies have to have in order to effectively run a tool like that. That to me is kind of where we sit here right at the beginning of October. The other piece of that is in that uncertainty, in this moment leading up, aside from the real life implications of war, there's the real life implications of money and the economy here in the United States, and jobs and mortgage and interest rates. And there is this kind of juxtaposition right now of, I think most Americans would say they're feeling pretty good. Inflation has come down, at least eased. My retirement account is bouncing back. The jobs reports looking promising, the interest rates dropping, the appeal of being able to buy a home in the not too distant future. As you said, a lot of people looking forward with what feels like, at least here for a moment, a sense of optimism in spite of this global war happening over there. Kind of an odd feeling, right?
Well, a sense of optimism and a sense of choice, something that we talked about, this notion of a luxury of choice, right? The world, unfortunately, is a place that isn't fair as it pertains to the way that human life is valued and treated. And that's an unfortunate but true statement. And if there are 8.5 billion people on the planet, how many of those people have choices? It turns out in America that 330 to 350 million, which is a small little slice of the world, there are a lot of individuals, the ones you just rattled off, who are paying attention to the news, local and national, who are paying some attention, not much, to global, worrying about purchasing a first home, maybe having a kid. Do I feel good going into an election cycle? And you said all of the feeling good and giving Americans, whether it's choice or the illusion of choice, is really important, because as long as everyone feels like everything here is going really well, then no one would say, gosh, how is it we keep writing these, $670 million check to Ukraine? How is it we just reinvested in the Iron Dome in Israel? How is it we just, and all this cash going out, it's not fixing our roads. It's not bailing out the southeastern seaboard, which is literally underwater after Helena. It's not taking care of the fact that kids still in Flint, Michigan don't have clean drinking water. It's not fixing the broken educational system, public and private. It's not fixing, I take a big heavy sigh. It's not doing any of the domestic things that I would like them to do, but they've given me this feeling of choice, of optimism, of positivity about me, and they use the word myopic, my own little world that I'm in, that you're in, that we're in. And as fall starts, and if kids are going to school, and it's the first of the month, second of the month, bills are due, like, wow, honey, we paid all the bills in full, and the credit card, is down. Oh, it's great, but the United States is heavily investing in lavender AI to better blow up, people halfway across the world
more efficiently.
And we're still underwater in the Carolinas. But, we're feeling like we have something we're coming out of. So I feel like there is a bit of this three-card Monty, where is the pea under what shell? And as long as we feel like we still have a sense of that control and of ownership over our agency, over our own decisions and our own life, then maybe we don't question all of these other bigger things that are happening and that are clearly at values and at numbers that are so far beyond anything that we'll really contemplate, that it becomes something we can't contemplate by definition, right? The numbers are so big that we just say, oh, of course, this much, of course, Microsoft invested $13 billion in OpenAI over the last 3 years. But, what have they did something, I'm sure, to help out the roads and, schools in Washington State, probably, right, guys? Right. Okay, keep moving forward. We just don't have all the answers to some of these bigger questions, I think. And that to me is the part where, hey, this is what we've done really well, what America does really well. We tell you the narrative. And as long as all of your day-to-day life touch points are validations reflecting the narrative that we're told, then we don't ask too many more questions. It's, and I'm going as far without saying like we're sheep being herded, but it feels like everything's great in this pasture right now, even though we just mentioned like about 3 or 4 things that are not so great going on in the greater world. It will have some impact on us economically. We just don't know what and when.
I think that's exactly right. I think that economic impact is being wound up right now. This has been my prediction for a while. It's being wound up for right now, starting October 2nd, to have this feeling happening. And I think some of the war is meant to, on a global stage, meant to distract from that. If you're in the business of controlling a narrative and you're playing on a global stage and you're a global actor, what other better way than to pull the story your way to control that narrative than with a physical attack? And I think that what happens next over the next 30 days, will be a really important factor in how Americans are feeling in November. And if this war can come to a quick resolution, and we say quick resolution, it's been going on now for a while, but it feels like it got real hot. It feels like it got defined as a war. It feels like it's the first time I've seen these rockets in the air. And it feels like now's the time to end it, to negotiate it. And does Biden get that as a swan song? Does that become like, I get to save the Middle East, get to create peace in the Middle East? Like, think about that as a narrative, especially for young voters who, as you pointed out, this conflict has been going on for millennia. But for young voters to hear some semblance of a peace in the Middle East, I think that could be really, really, big, impactful. I'm making up what could be a potential narrative here. If they can bring this war to a resolution quickly, then who else gets to say that? Who else gets to kind of help and support? And it's been tenuous. And you've heard, and I think Netanyahu, when he was here for the UN summit just a couple weeks ago, it was interesting to me that Biden and Harris led separate meetings, that they both met with Netanyahu, but they did so individually. I found that very interesting in what is and the history books this will be a fascinating transition of power story here in how I hope it takes place, in that she is having to conduct separate meetings so that she can conduct her own negotiating. And that negotiation has to be down to one person at the end of the day. And right now, it's Biden.
Do we know that if those meetings were them alone with Netanyahu, or is it like with Blinken, both of them separately?
Oh, good question. I don't know. I guess somewhere in a docket you could see who is physically in the meeting. But I think also the way it gets defined. If it's defined as a one-on-one meeting, there may still be other people in the room, but it gets
maybe
defined.
A translator, maybe
if.
Okay, so that's interesting to think about. But what you just got me thinking about is, so again, we're talking about two things for our listeners. I think it's important. It might sound like we're talking about two things that are very different, right? We're talking about a hot global proxy war. Wars is the plural that we're in, right? We're in easily two, if not more, but two that we talk about in the press. And then we're talking about all of the investment in AI, but they are more tied together than we all think. And just to bring everyone back a little bit, now remember when Sam Altman, who was the head of OpenAI, was being forced out of OpenAI because the people at Microsoft who had been putting in money, and again, I want to say it's north of 10 to 12 billion over however many years. They're one of the largest investors and have been aligned with OpenAI for a long time. There was a moment when they were pushing out Sam Altman, and then he was coming back in. There was a moment when Microsoft was being pushed out, or their investment was being reduced, and Apple was coming in. All at the same time that you had Helen Toner talking about effective altruism and saying, I don't want to be a part of this thing called OpenAI. Why? Because we have not defined, and this you'll hear echoes of Elon Musk here, we have not defined the parameters of what AI should be allowed to manipulate, operate, influence, optimize, pick your word. Because if the military were to get it, and now we're talking about the movies like The Terminator and The Creator and the others, where if Skynet becomes sentient, because that's the AI that's going to control our nukes, everyone talks about our nukes, well, then that could effectively come to some sense of agency of its own and say, well, we don't need humans, right? We're going to completely erase humanity because we, the AI, are better. Right? That was stuff that was being said out of many people's mouths.
So I'm looking back at a news article from January 22nd. headline it's from GovConWire, a little local media outlet here in DC. OpenAI lifts military ban, opens doors to DoD for cybersecurity collab at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland on January 16th. It was revealed that OpenAI and the DoD will be collaborating on artificial intelligence-based cybersecurity technology, which the timeline is exactly where you began, where many on the board of directors were leaving because of this effective altruism, while OpenAI was shuffling the cards in the structural organization as a nonprofit to a for-profit, in whom the investors were and who was going to pay up for this. And they went to Microsoft, and then he got fired, and then he worked for Microsoft, and now he's back. And then he went and just raised another, in 9 months, raised another funding round for what is now more money. And that tells you everything you need to know, that the technology went to the highest bidder. And
exactly.
I think I know who it is.
Well, and so it went to the highest bidder, and that's exactly my point. Because now we're talking stories. It's so smacking of each of the Web 1 and Web 2 and Web 3 eras, right? There was a time when a company would feel really far behind on what? On Web 2.0, on user reviews and user uploads. Users are going to upload photos and videos to stuff, and like, how are we going to manage that? And then there was a wave of hires of engineers who were bleeding edge specialists. A lot of them were scooped up by YouTube, which was then scooped up by Google, who developed something really cool called sharding. Sharding, as in like shards of glass, allows you to hit a button on a YouTube video, have it start playing before the whole video arrives. But that evolved into something you heard Netflix call streaming, etc. But revolutionizing the way content was delivered, you did not need the whole piece of content, just a fraction of a percentage, and we'll build it as we play. So those guys will get hired for these salaries that were at the time astronomical. Like a developer at Google in 2003 being hired for $500,000. You're like, what are you talking about? Then of course now that's like pennies at Netflix. Don't hire an executive for 1.2 million or whatever. But you know what I mean? Scaled up. Okay. Fast forward to our newest crush. We're all in love with AI. Here come all these players. Well, guess who loves the DOJ and the DOD? Microsoft. Guess who doesn't love? Who loves privacy? Apple. So Apple was at the table pushing Microsoft out, but dropped their last funding round unexpectedly, the last hour in the final stage. Now, if I'm looking at tea leaves, I'm thinking, okay, what was it that Apple saw at the very last second? Did Apple see the entire list of investors? Did Apple see the roadmap that aligns OpenAI hardcore with the government and all these different branches of the military? Did Apple see that there would be full blockchain transparency and AI wouldn't be able to live in a private cloud on a private server on your private phone? I don't know.
Enclave, maybe they call it enclave.
Sorry, enclave. but maybe there's something to this. What I'm saying is, of all the companies that are listed in investing in OpenAI, Apple is the one who kind of sort of seems like the least interested in anything to do with war. When you look at the guys who are invested in it from NVIDIA, okay, how do we visualize our mesh, system of shooting down missiles? Well, we're going to need the NVIDIA chip. How are we going to use like secure VPN across countries and random places on like insanely crappy PC notebooks that are going to hook up to the Starlink from Elon Musk to fire stuff down? There's no guy plugging an iMac into one of those. They're plugging into some janky Asus whatever workbook that was $199, and it's from 10 years ago, but somehow, some way, they just stick in that little card and it still runs all the new AI stuff and everything works. So Microsoft is like, see, he called them fossil. I call these integral to your defense network. So as I look at this now, mission critical. As I look at now the words mission critical, the words national security, the word, you just keep rattling them off. It is no surprise to me that Apple has stepped away, and let's not use a pun here, but Amazon came in and said, let us assure you with our cloud services that we are your best friend. And turns out they won. And so whether it's highest bidder or maybe like loosest morals, no, it's like there's some line there, because if you're telling me someone's being offered hundreds of millions of dollars to come work at a company to do AI stuff, that person's either a genius or a criminal. But either way, we're seeing the hysteria that is being created now, and how AI is running away with its own narrative, which to me comes back to that thing that we called, and we called it so well when Apple came out, WWDC. What would they call it? And we said they would call it Apple Intelligence, not artificial intelligence, because then they just separate themselves from everyone else who's doing all that bad stuff.
Yeah, we don't want to do that
stuff.
We want to stay out of that. Stuff. And you know who we haven't talked about, who also wants to do all of that stuff, but whose name hasn't come up not once.
Are you recording
in today's show? None other than, what is Meta doing in all of this as we go, as we talk? The guy who has had to sit on Capitol Hill and take a beating about privacy, about violent videos, about blood in the streets showing up on Facebook, who had to rebrand the company as Meta. What did he get to do in the past couple weeks? But he got to steal the narrative when he walked on stage unveiling the newest AR glasses from Meta, fitting the form factor of a Meta Ray-Bans with the first AR-powered lenses. He got to show a prototype from the stage. I don't know if you saw the shirt that he was wearing. It was like the Latin word for only Zuck, basically. Like he is already so ingrained as a defense contractor.
He already knows that. He knows the talk and the law.
He is already rushing to what are we going to give our soldiers on the ground? What kind of technology are we going to empower our machine workers, our students, our teachers? We are going to empower them with augmented reality technology that can do on-the-fly training, overlaying your environment. It can show you how to put a car engine together as you look at it. I can say, hey, Meta, how do I connect these two PVC pipes, and what type of material tool do I need? Which tool do I need? Oh, this tool? Grab this tool, place it, put it together. Kids, adults could do anything when they are now powered with computer vision, artificial intelligence. Can you hear this?
Yeah. That's talking through the side.
Talking. So it's got speakers.
Because you said something and it activated it?
It's telling you how to connect PVC pipes on Great.
Oh. That is awesome. Well, so, I mean, but that, it also, and incidentally, apparently one of the guys from Mossad, I don't know, I've heard this, was complimenting Zuck on his fitness. That I guess he's been doing all the jiu-jitsu training, because there was a period when he wanted to like wrestle or fight Musk or whoever else would try to take him. And he got complimented on like, hey, you're making stuff and you like look like one of us, meaning a Mossad agent. I'm like, this is weird. He went from like the nerd in a skinny kid and like hadn't seen the light of day with the little hoodie to like wearing this poodle Zuck with these like rippling muscles under some shirt, showing off Ray-Bans. I mean, we'll talk about another juxtaposition that I've been saying. Really, this episode is the juxtaposition episode. There are these huge forces that are building on either side of a line. We were talking before we started recording. This is the schoolyard moment. We're all out at PE. And someone's going to name team captains, and we're going to start picking sides, just one after the other. Like, Apple, which side are you with? I'm with these guys. Oh, no, I'm not with these guys. Microsoft, right over here. Okay. Zuck, where are you? You're going to be on your own team? Fine. How about you over here? Mossad, you with us? OpenAI? Great. China, Hong Kong? You guys still think nukes are okay with AI? Okay, you go with Zuck. I think all these, everyone's just sort of moving everyone around sort of based on their position on AI as it pertains to, and like, what would be the top categories? I mean, everyone throws around AI for training and AI for medicine, and AI is going to develop cancer DNA strains. Everyone loves all that. We know that's not where the money is. So AI is going to be in gaming. AI is going to be in military. AI is going to be in
finance.
And is there a fourth? Or is that we're going to sort of stop there and just say these are the three that matter, right?
Legal, medical, healthcare. I mean,
well, all of those are like secondary, tertiary, because we all know it's expensive it's messy, it's regulated, it's all these things. You want to talk about military? Do whatever you want. You
Well,
want to talk about gaming? Do whatever you want. Just don't do porn. Or actually, porn's probably in there too. They're probably moving forward as well. And then financial. Hey, we've had black boxes and algorithms running for decades. We know about AI. Boom, 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 boom. Follow the money. No
well,
one.
does
Zuck's not
Microsoft get
talking
to
healthcare
build?
anymore.
No, but okay. So we just talked about the money and the war side of things, and you want to pull, where AI shows up in terms of next biggest industries to get regulated. What does Microsoft have under them? But the gaming world with Xbox and Fortnite and all of Roblox and all of the IP that sits under that. And what I've often said is the only way that gaming can become the economic engine that it maybe deserves to be is if you can bring on-chain transactions, microtransactions into that gaming world. And I think that's also why we sit in this kind of still weird moment right now. I think I mentioned earlier to you that the SEC has until October 7th to appeal the Ripple decision, which was the split decision of depending on where you bought this token. It could have been defined as a security versus if you bought it on a secondary market, it could be defined as a commodity. So depending on who or how you bought it, kind of dictated what the terms of whether or not it needed to fall under securities law. I mean, that's the better way to put it. They weren't defining it as a commodity. They were defining whether or not it fell under securities law. What does all of that have to do with anything? Well, the moment that there's clarity around that, then platforms like Microsoft could be issuing, real world tokenized assets, like a gaming piece, a skin that could be on chain that is already being bought and sold and transacted in US dollars, but it's being stored in Microsoft's cloud. I don't have any actual custody over it as the buyer. Imagine what that economic engine could do to a platform like Microsoft, who could run all of that through, think of we've talked about this. What the metaverse needs is the ability to transpose how you see me, right? I need to be able to tell the AI, this is how I want to show up for you. This is what I want this group of people to see me as. Here's my skins. Here's my wallet. Here's how much money I paid for them. And here are the permission settings. AI, go do what you do. Go make all of my digital twins present in all of these gaming environments, and come back to me with if there are moments to buy things, if there are opportunities for transactions, if I have to attend to one of my players, if I need to actually play the game, right? We need you to do this new battle royale. We need you to train your player. I mean, there's a whole nother way I'm thinking about where I think gaming can go. And I'm looking at some of this through the lens of, my kids, my 9-year-old, really more and more getting into the skins within Fortnite, the fashion of it, the getting to define yourself in terms of how you show up. Yeah.
And that's what every kid loves. But what I'm starting to realize is that there, in some ways, to me, the SEC versus Ripple ongoing debacle is like a problem of yesteryear. It feels like a problem that we maybe already outlived, right? Because there was a time, and it was exacerbated by pandemic and exacerbated by all of the changes in our lifestyle, which is that there was the cryptocurrency, the blockchain-based game that would give you awards in some token, the NFT that might be a swizzle bang or a crypto chick or a bored ape or a million other things in between. They all at the time felt like platform, themselves uniquely, right? I am playing Crypto Gems, the game on the blockchain called Solana, and I'm using this in-game currency that's a second layer of Solana token, et cetera, whatever the story is. And if you know someone who knows what they're talking about and they know what you're listening to, then it makes sense. And you're like, oh yeah, this is almost like I found a new game console. It's not called a Sega or an Atari or a Sony or a Nintendo. It's called a Solana, and it has this game cartridge that I can stick into it that's called this, Crypto Gems. And now I'm playing this game, but it may not be the case that there's any more games for this specific console, to put it in sort of gaming terms. I may have to get another console, et cetera, et cetera. So time passes where there were, God, a proliferation of what? Just thousands, if you use this metaphor, of console and hundreds of thousands of games, some of which were never even really games, just ways to rob you, steal your money, rug pull, right? Invest in this thing. I'm going to get what? Oh, where'd you guys go? We're gone. So the memory of that is almost starting to wash away, right? Because now we're heading into this new AI gaming world. And you just mentioned Microsoft, right? Whether it's access to the Steam platform or Xbox, different things, like they have a pretty good little ownership over the world of gaming that they define. And of course, there's other guys out there too, like Sony and Nintendo. But Microsoft's more interesting because they're more actively pouring money into AI. Would it be so strange to think that the SEC crypto a ruling against Ripple comes out and goes and it plays out however it plays out? But what ends up happening is, just like Meta and Microsoft and Apple and everyone else wanted to go, all the little guys with their projects and their blockchains and their tokens can't exist in this world. It's cute, but make no mistake, Web3, like Web2, is still run by the same guys. It's still Facebook, it's still Apple, it's still Microsoft, it's still Netflix, it's still the people who provide you the internet. So even when people even when you hear people saying on chain, you and I love it. But even when things are on chain, will those companies even say they are? They might not. Stealing the narrative is about making it so easy to understand for everyone. So when I think about Microsoft specifically, and once this ruling happens, do they go nuts with in-game transactions with Call of Duty and with all these things? Of course they do. Is it on-chain or is it off-chain? Does it matter? Then what does the end user know? I log into my wallet, and my wallet accesses something that verifies me, and I get all the access to all of my things across the network of services that are owned, in this case, by Microsoft. But some might be on-chain, some might not be on-chain. At some point in the future, they will all be on-chain. But we were talking about, change happens so slow. And then one day they're just going to say, oh yeah, the year is 2028. By the way, you didn't know, but we've upgraded everything and now we're 100% on chain. You'll say, oh, cool, I'm still playing Call of Duty.
Well,
is it any
that
different?
interoperability that you're talking about leads me to when I said, anybody's going to be able to look at anything and build anything. And I was talking about in the physical world, take that all the way through to what I've been playing with over the past 3 or 4 months in my spare time with Cursor AI. And the ability to describe in natural language a full software as a service application and watch the AI code out the React script into a live module that is actually workable inside of the browser in real time. And the ability to then think, describe, articulate, here's what this button should do. Here's what I need the game to do. Here's what the first character's mission should be. Now I could just build my own game, but those assets that I've acquired can come with me. And the ones you acquired, you can play my game too if you want. I just coded it out, but bring your stuff, no big deal. It works on chain. That to me is that interoperability. That is the dream of being able to invent and create whatever that experience is, the game, the software, the application. And for now, anybody to be able to come, they can log in with their wallet if they have the right amount of, your case, Solana or Base or ETH, or maybe it's Bitcoin. They can transact in my game, and I can put
let me ask you this. Let me ask you this real quick. So that Cursor AI, right? And you prompted it, and now it's dumping out the code. And that code is on chain, or that code is just rendering in a web browser?
The code's just rendering on a web browser, but there's no reason why I couldn't put it on chain and now I own it, right?
Right. But my point is that that's where there's this perfect little disconnect moment.
Did you hear about the Y Combinator guys?
No, tell me about them. Are they on chain?
No, the Y Combinator guys straight up on Twitter, who Pair AI, who basically said that they stole an open source code base and customized it, but you can, they somebody proved that they did like a find and replace to put pair AI, and Y Combinator funded them. And now they're out there apologizing because they stole some open source code, changed the license, called it their own, and raised 10 million.
Yeah. Well, so that's my point is that with something like Cursor AI and stuff that we've played with code assistants like Claude AI, for example, is another one, where you can basically say, okay, I'm going to go to GitHub. I'm going to go to GitHub and I'm going to take an open source library of code and maybe even supporting libraries. I'm going to see how it renders. Then I'm going to talk to my assistant, whether it's Claude AI or Cursor AI or whatever, and I'm going to say, hey, this is our starting point. We need this to do these things differently and in this way. And it will, you can watch it, depending, we've never done it with a full blown web service, but like you could do it for a module component and you're like, this is crazy. It's just rewritten everything and even optimize it in a way that's better than the way the original person had written it. And is that illegal if you say that you're just starting from open source and then creating what's called you're creating a new art on top of that, which is how you file patents, in the States. So there's going to be this catch up here. So my point is right now, because of that example, it's a perfect one to put a final punctuation mark on this, is there are all of these people who are talking about AI and they're working and investing in AI, but that is not synonymous with Web3 or blockchain or crypto anything. Right now, AI is actually being used most from the most like banal criminal uses of kids late for their homework assignment, going and asking it to write say for them, which is clearly not theirs, and maybe even starting from something that was theirs or whatever, but new art on top, all the way up to the kinds of funny business you could do with a black box algorithm, which we know is not quote on chain or even true AI. It's just working around certain parameters and just being basically a sleepless gambler who stays up all night and just bets and bids for you. So to me, what the great fallacy of AI and how well they stole the narrative is AI is just being used to disrupt, to optimize, and to take advantage of Web 2. We're not really yet seeing that divide cross to say AI is helping a blockchain project. AI is helping a new Web3 blank. Like that's where people are stumbling over their own words, and why I think you would find some desperate ass people willing to pay millions and millions of untold dollars to hire some special individual who is your guru, who's going to come in and just AIify your whole business. When in fact, all that you might be doing is going to GitHub, downloading a few random repositories from someone in a foreign country who probably knows nothing about the US legal system, changing enough things about it to make it look like their own, and off we go. And to the judge, it's like, hey, what do you mean? There's only one person in the world who can think of the same idea, kind of, sort of, in the same moment in time? No, there's like thousands of us, and I just happen to be one of the two. That's what's going to be wild, is figuring out how those rules apply and let all of those Wild West scofflaws do all their Web 2 criminal business. And then when the real AI developers and the real Web3 and the real blockchain stuff starts to happen, then maybe we'll actually see things that are net new and not just things that are like, wow, I have a better optimized, word completion bot attached to my Microsoft Office 365 account.
Well, we have got to get back into a groove here. I do know that California Governor Gavin Newsom vetoed a bill which would have created the first in-nation AI regulation in a bill that divided Silicon Valley. This is from 2 days ago. And I know simultaneously that the EU is back to the drawing board after, you will recall, one of our summer episodes where the guy from Facebook, who now was from the British government, I cannot remember his name, Nick Clegg, I believe.
Yeah, that's good. Very good.
And he said that it wasn't good enough, if you remember, that the EU AI Act came out. And he said, guys, good attempt. But you guys missed a couple of important things. Back to the drawing board. So the fact that Newsom had to veto it, we throw it back over to the EU. We're in October. Everybody's going to get another shake here now that everybody's got their chess pieces lined up. Cards are on the table. Iron domes have been shown to the world. and dollar bills, including 6 billion, changing hands at Sam Altman's direction. I can't wait to do it again. Let's go.
I can't wait to do it again, Michael. This is awesome getting back to it. Talk to you next time.
That's all the time we have for this episode of Off the Record, on the Rocks. Join us next week for more news on all things Web3. Check, please.
And what we're going to see, and I think something we're going to